Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't do this last night, but here now, and yeah, counting down the last couple streams of the year. So, hope everybody's doing okay getting everything wrapped up this year. The final module is what we're in now, and there's really not that much to do. I mean, you have to do the final project, which is a lot of work, but there's not a bunch of extra stuff. So just the final project, the final at-home experiment, and there's going to be one last wrap-up quiz next week. And that's it. So hopefully everything's gone well, and you've learned some stuff this semester, and you feel better about reading science and interpreting science, and the final project is kind of part of that. So I've gotten a lot of questions about the articles selected over the past week, and I wanted to go through the project one more time. I know I did this last time, so you can look up that video if you want more information, but just some of the questions that I've been getting I wanted to address, and I wanted to go through an example paper so you can see what that looks like. So for those of you who submitted proposals, they should all be graded, so you should have comments. If everything looks good, go ahead and get started on your final paper. If you got 0 points or low points or something on your proposal, it's because you didn't follow the directions. You didn't get the right types of articles or that kind of thing. You need to resubmit that. So you will get full credit when you have the correct thing, but you need to find the right types of articles and then resubmit that proposal. It would be great if you could let me know on Discord when you submit the proposal, and then I can go on and look at it right away, because I don't get any kind of notification when a new assignment comes in if something's already graded as 0. So let me know if that comes in, and then I will check it, and hopefully everything is fine, and you can move on with the project. All right, so the biggest issue that I've seen so far is not understanding this idea of finding an article from a newspaper, magazine, etc., a non-scientific source. So that's what I want to look at. What does that mean? We talked about a couple modules ago, you did your scientific article report, where you looked up a scientific report of research, a primary record of research, which, again, just to refresh with the definitions, when we say scientific paper or scientific report or scientific article, what we're saying with that term is that it is a primary report of research. So some researchers did an experiment, and this is the first that they're reporting of that experiment. And it is in that particular kind of recognizable format where you've got all the authors' names listed and the abstract and introduction, all that stuff that we've been talking about. So those are the scientific research papers. And you don't want to start looking for those. The idea is not to start with a scientific research paper. The idea is to start with a non-scientific paper from a regular old website or magazine or newspaper or something like that, that then links out to those 2 studies, and those are what you're going to be, and all of those 3 together are what you're going to be writing about. So the key here, if we look at the instruction page here, the very last thing, the point of the paper is to discuss how the article does, like how good of a job it does at interpreting the research from the scientific papers. So it's not just about like a report on a topic that you use scientific papers for your reference. That's not the idea here. The idea is how well does a journalist, blogger, writer, whatever, do at interpreting scientific research. All right. So that said, let's take a look at an example of a former paper, of a paper from a previous class. So here's one, and by the way, these are all posted in the last module, in module 7 in the activities, under example papers, final project, something like that. Names have been redacted, but these are all good papers that I've gotten in the class. So we're not going to go through and read the whole thing, but let's look at you're welcome to read them, but let's look at the actual papers that are used here. So the first site here, this first link, is what we call the article, the news article, and that is this. Now, it's from a college. It's from Harvard School of Public Health, but it's not a primary report of research. You can usually pick these things out because they have like, stock photos, pictures, sometimes things like that. Like this is definitely meant for normal people, a popular audience to come and read and learn some things about, in this case, low-calorie sweeteners. So they come to this website, and it's not in that format of a scientific report or a paper. It doesn't have any authors listed actually at all. I don't know if they're down here. No, it's just like the site is the author. Who knows who the actual author is? It's not split up into those sections of abstract, introduction, methods, that kind of thing. It's not reporting out a specific results of research. It's kind of summarizing them and making the scientific information easier to understand for a non-science audience. So this is the kind of thing that you're looking for to start your search. This is the kind of thing you want. And then you go through here and you look for references to other studies. Like, are they getting their information from other studies? So like in this case, here is they list here some research looking at potential differences in effects from the various types of LCS. And then they list some different results of some studies. All right, so like in this case, this link does not go directly to this study. They actually have more of a reference style. You can see like the footnote here, number 3. So if we want to look at this study about sugar-sweetened beverages and low-calorie sweeteners linked with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, we would look down at number 3 in the references. And here is where it actually links directly to the thing, which I think this is a paper, one of the papers that this particular student used. So now you have linked an actual scientific report, right? We have the standard format where you have, all your authors, you're in a journal. There's usually a PDF available that has that nice column format. You've got your abstract, introduction, study design, big tables with lots of data, results, graphs showing, pictures, diagrams showing the results, all that stuff. Like this is what, this is a scientific report of a study that they did. So this is obviously this big, long thing with lots and lots and lots of stuff. And the former article only really talks about it with a quick little blurb, right? So even like far, far shorter even than an abstract. It just says, they found this, the authors noted this. That's it, 2 sentences about that entire giant paper. So the point of the final project is to look at something like this and say, all right, this person summarized that entire paper in like 2 sentences. What did they miss? What did they leave out? What did they exaggerate? What did they maybe not quite get right? What did they ignore? Things like that. So to do that, you have to have a really good sense of what was in the scientific paper to start with. So that's why a big part of your final paper is going to be actually going through this whole paper and rather than summarizing it in 2 sentences, really like digging through what all these results mean. As you're going through this, I should also note one of the dangers and common places where people miss points on their final project is plagiarism, but not in like a really bad, like get kicked out of school. Like you're not just, I'm not talking about like just grabbing a whole paper and putting it in there. I mean more like not putting the results in your own words and just using the language of the paper. And it's actually really obvious when I read them because there's this particular voice that's used in these scientific reports, and for the most part, you all are not going to be writing in that voice because it takes experience. It's not even necessarily a good thing. It's just the way that these papers are written. But I can pretty clearly tell when you're just pulling sentences directly from the paper versus explaining them yourself in your own words. So as you're writing your paper, make sure that you are not taking language directly from the paper and putting it into your own paper. You should get to the point in reading these papers where you really understand what they're saying, and that's going to take more work than just reading the paper. Hopefully, I know reading some of your proposals, you've already done this. You've already gone through and read the paper, but you're going to have to look stuff up. You're going to have to learn some things that you didn't know before. Lots of acronyms and terms and ideas that are unfamiliar to you because, again, this type of a paper is not meant for us necessarily. It's meant for other researchers, but we can do research and we can look stuff up and we can figure this out. So I don't want to hear again what the authors say in your paper. I want to hear your version of explaining all of these things. So when you look at a figure, for example, so let's take a look at this one. Okay, well, it's not very big. I would get the PDF copy. You can probably get a better resolution copy in the PDF. But if I look at the caption down here, right? Like it's explaining, that's the caption, and then in the results, I'm sure they talk about what that means. But I want to know, how do you explain this? Like if we were just in class together and this picture were there and this was your paper, could you just tell me what all those things mean? What is this showing? What do those different lines mean? What does this represent? Why is this in there? Remember, as we talked about before, if somebody is bothering to put a big picture in a paper, it's because it's important and it conveys information in a clear way. So that's a really important part of important part of explaining these papers in your final project, is going through these figures and explaining them in your own words. So how do you explain them to someone? And a good way to practice that and make sure that it comes out okay is, before you even start writing, explain it to somebody. And that somebody could be nobody. It could be your pet. It could be a picture of someone. If you want, you could set up a meeting with me and just explain it to me. But just say it out loud. Like, how do you talk about this? And if you can't do it, then that means you need to get a little bit more information and understand what's going on in these figures a little bit better. All right, so please resist the temptation to copy language from the articles when you're explaining these different things in your final paper. All right, so the second paper from this article is this one, which is, again, another paper in a journal, PLOS Medicine, with all the standard stuff, the introduction, whatever. This one's actually a little bit different type of paper. It's not a report of scientific research. It's a, what do they call it? It's like an interpretation or policy type thing. But, it's still in a scientific journal, and that's still okay. But again, this is linked from one of these. Right, so one of these references is going to be here. So now if we go back to the student's paper, we can look at how they went through this. And I encourage you to read these papers. These students all did great jobs, and you can see that their papers are all kind of different lengths and different topics, but have that same good format of this article and then the research papers, right? So a little introduction, and then this person goes right into that first research paper and really talks about all of the different things, like What kind of study was it? What does that mean? So look right up here at the beginning. The authors used a cohort study method, which is a study that uses a large group of individuals to investigate the cause of a disease and find possible links between factors and health outcomes. So if there are these kind of unknown terms or things you had to look up or things you don't quite understand or you don't think somebody reading would understand, then you can define those in your paper. Some other examples you'll see took a more a different structure there, where they actually like just listed terms and said this means this and this means this and this means this. Depending on the type of papers you have, that may or may not be helpful, or just the way you want to do things or not. They just kind of summarize things, how many people they were, what did they do, and then how did they test it, and what did they find out. So they're going through that and kind of finding out some stuff. And then they go into the second one over here. All right. So then, and this is kind of how you tie it all together near at the end, it doesn't have to be at the end, but I think it makes more sense that way. Now this person goes back to that article published by Harvard University and kind of talks about what they reported and like just interesting context, like that they are trying to be neutral and that they don't recommend or endorse products. And then they just finish by saying the article covered the different viewpoints in artificial sweeteners and did not misinterpret the data. I would have liked to see a little bit more in this paragraph, that this would expand a little bit more to talk about the specifics of like what they did. But this is why sometimes a less reputable source can be helpful. Because in this case, this site is maybe run by people from this school who really want to make sure they get this stuff right. They might be these researchers. So they're definitely trying to make sure that that it's good, right? And that they're saying things that are correct. If you find something from a little bit less reputable of a site, it can be a more interesting part of your paper when they get something wrong. And this one, you can see from the language here that this is written by somebody who probably is pretty close to this material and really knows what they're talking about. And that's fine, but that means that you don't necessarily have as much to write about when you're talking about did they do a good job or not. So that's the idea. If you have questions on that format, certainly let me know. And if you are somebody who picked the wrong kinds of articles that doesn't really fit this assignment properly, make sure you get the right ones right away, because we're running out of time here. Papers due, and you got to have time to read the articles, look everything up, understand everything, write, and then write this substantial paper. So hopefully that's going okay with you. Hopefully you're all caught up on the rest of the stuff, so you can really devote your time these next couple of weeks to this project. And yeah, that's all for now. So Friday morning, we'll meet back here. If you have questions about the project or other things like that, you're welcome to ask them in the chat, or if there's things you want me to address during this, you can send me messages beforehand on Discord and say, hey, can you talk about whatever? That's fine. And then we'll talk about vitamins on Friday too, which is kind of interesting topic. So I will see you then, and happy writing. Hope everything's going okay. Get your vaccines if you haven't already. Bye.